I see both sides of the issue here. I want to play devil's advocate, though, on the idea of scaling this up to the point where it is a, Uber or Lyft competitor. Like, we can use Arcade City as an example. Like, how do we get to the point where people are transacting on Lightning and, using this decentralized social system to interact with each other at a time where we already have the, a full global distribution of Uber and Lyft, and we have the full global distribution of social apps. It's going to be I think it's going to be a harder, it's a lot harder to sell the idea of decentralized social when there are already existing social platforms, right? They've already got a market share. And so how do we then get to the point where we can, we have to be 10x better on some level, right? We have to, in order to disrupt this group of social apps and ride-sharing apps, we need to have a system that is clearly better for everyone. What's your pitch to the person walking down the street who asks, why do I need this? Why can't I just use Uber? Why can't I just, use Facebook to chat with my friends?
I'll start with rideshare. If the person's walking down the streets of Manila in the Philippines, which has the densest traffic in the world, Uber is not available there. Uber sold their entire Southeast Asian operation to the local competitor called Grab, and Grab for years has had essentially monopoly with all of these insane supply caps from the government that they have to deal with. There have been people trying to sign up that couldn't, all sorts of just BS regulations and hoops. So there's a level of if we're just providing a service, particularly and forget even the Philippines for a second. Go to an area like Uber's not everywhere. Uber does not at all serve many rural areas. In fact, one of the first people who started an arcade network in the U.S. was in rural Iowa, and he asked us early on. He was like, "Hey, can I print up business cards and put Arcade City, Iowa on it?" We're like, "Absolutely." And with no marketing support, no support of any kind aside from us cheering him on, went into bars, drummed up local business, asked people if they needed rides home, built up a clientele, got so busy that he recruited 7 other drivers, got on the local news, and a newspaper headline wrote, the headline was, "Arcade City brings rideshare to the Cedar Valley before Uber." That's priceless. And here's the cool thing. I guarantee you there is one of that type of person, in every city, in every rural area around the world. So I would want to start by, and even if it's, let's just say, for example, we're focusing on the bottom billion or bottom 2 billion of folks, empowering people where they actually, this kind of thing would make a lot of difference for them. And look, it might look way different in different areas. It might not be, I need a grub, I need someone to give me a cup of coffee from the street down the road. It might be take this set of farmed goods from one area to the next. There's areas like Puerto Rico, for example, where Uber is really big in San Juan, and you can get from San Juan to other places on the island, but you got an island of 3 million people, a lot of them in the countryside, who cannot reliably get from the countryside to the city. Or, we did a survey a couple years ago just asking people on the island, what were their complaints about transportation. And, reliable city-to-city transportation outside of San Juan was a big thing. So just by being there and having the same things kind of available is going to make a big difference. I think there's, so on the user experience side, so first of all, for the driver, our drivers in Austin have built their own recurring customer base. They make, some of them, 2 to 3 times the money that they made with the other services. It's all on their own terms. No one can fire them. 3 years after I had that experience of not having my own customer base, I talked with one of our Austin drivers, and he's got his next 2 weeks booked of pre-scheduled rides of his regulars who pay him better anyways. It's a level of job security and stability no rideshare company in the world is even structurally capable of matching. You add to that some of the friction in the last couple of years with the COVID limitations. As an example, I got into a car in Miami. The Lyft driver, as I'm getting in, I didn't wear a mask, but as I'm getting in the car, he starts putting on a mask. And I'm like, hey man, I don't care. Like, don't put one on because of me. He says, oh no, the Lyft app will take screenshots of him every so often. And if he's not wearing a mask, he'll get penalized and potentially deactivated. Like, I think that's completely fucked up for a company to be basically intervening in health decisions like that. Now, the answer to that is not no one can wear masks. The answer is you empower drivers to make their own decisions. There might be a driver who wants to wear a hazmat suit and require all of his riders to wear a hazmat suit. And he should have the ability to market that as its own service and let it compete on the open market. And if people want to do fist bumps and hugs when you get into the car, like, people should be able to specialize in that. We've seen in Austin, when you empower people to be entrepreneurial, you get levels of service provided that the corporates don't do. Early on in Arcade, one of the team leaders, the kind of driver leaders earlier on, she had the idea to create what we then called pod, like her own kind of sub-team of drivers, all female drivers. And now, in the intervening years, there have been other startups that have been tried to portray that as a new idea, and we're going to have people be able to choose the gender of their drivers, but completely organically, without any corporate involvement, we're able to now solve a use case called a young lady's getting out of the club at 2 a.m., doesn't want to roll the dice to see if Uber's algorithm pairs her with a creeper who now knows where she lives, which is something that Uber and Lyft have had trouble with. Just empowering people to make decisions like that. We've had people say, hey, I've got access to a military base. I'd like to provide custom service for military members. We've had people say they want to provide custom support to the handicapped. We've had a visually impaired rider stand up at one of our early rider-driver meetups and say it makes all the difference for him to be able to specify in his request that he's visually impaired, he has a service animal, whereas with Lyft, maybe they changed it in the last few years, but he couldn't specify that, and so he would face the possibility of a Lyft driver pulling up, not wanting a dog in the car, and pulling off. He doesn't have to face that with Arcade because people are able to accept him on terms that he can set. So I would say there's all sorts of examples of where our service model is a dramatic improvement over Uber and Lyft, and just by the fact that we are able to participate and compete globally, that's more than enough to establish a successful business. And once we get some more real funding and revenue flowing, I think we'll be able to bulk out our operation and start to compete more head to head with Uber. And look, one of my goals is pushing them out of Austin entirely. So we'll see.